Good day. Today I'm going to talk about Cambridge thinking skill. So what exactly is Cambridge thinking skill? Now, you probably don't even hear about this unless you want to send your child to the New South Wales Selective School test and the Year 4 Opportunity Class test. Around 2020, the Department of Education decided to change the agency for testing. So they changed from ASA to Cambridge, the new test format. And one of the things that really make the parent feel concerned is the thinking skill. So what exactly is a thinking skill test? Well, basically, the Cambridge thinking skill test is a reasoning test. Now, so what do they have in it? They have, the bulk of it is called verbal reasoning. And then you have some question called abstract reasoning. You also have some quite difficult question in a mathematical reasoning. And finally, there's something quite tricky. This is called logical reasoning. Now, so the bulk of the thinking skill test will be verbal reasoning. And this is all about dealing with arguments. Now, let's have a look at a few questions. So this is one verbal reasoning question that I get from one of the past thinking skill tests at the OC Year 4 level. Here, let's have a look at it. A police officer say, anyone riding a motorcycle should wear a helmet. So that is a statement, and you're supposed to take that as true. And then you have a multiple choice question. Now, which one of these statements, if true, best support the police officer's claim? Now, at Year 4 level, they actually make it easy. Most of the time, the verbal reasoning will be asking for the main idea, the supporting details, and getting the conclusion out of a very small text. And here is another one. So this is a tiny little account, sort of like a little story. And then the question asks which of the detail A, B, C, or D can help to strengthen the argument. So at the OC level, this is not very hard. Now, we need to have a look at the types of questions. Within verbal reasoning, you have many subtypes. Okay, now the simplest question type is to identify the main idea. Now, they mainly give this kind of question to Year 4 student in the OC test. Now, the next type is about the conclusion. You have to identify the conclusion. Now, in this case, in the text, they give you the conclusion for the paragraph. And then in the choices, you have to identify it. Well, obviously, they will make it a bit harder by using different words. Now, another question that is really similar is drawing the conclusion. Now, it's very similar, but in this case, in the text, they will not have the conclusion written in there. So you go to the choices and you try to find something that could serve as the conclusion for the text. Now, this is the most popular type of question. It's called assess the impact of new evidence. This is a case where they give you, well, among the choices, they give you a new supporting detail, and you have to identify it. And it either help to strengthen or weaken the argument. Now, the next type is a lot harder. It is find an error in the argument. Now, basically, this is quite tricky because the kind of error, is something that you don't know what it is. So when you read through, you have to try to find in the text there is something wrong with it. And then you go to the choices and you identify the kind of error or where the error is in the text. Now, for year 4 OC level, they make it easy. So once you get to finding an error in the argument, that is probably the hardest type of question that they will give you. In the selective level, they may go on and give you harder stuff. So the next one, find a similar argument. This is a kind of question where you look at the argument and then they give you tiny little stories among the choices. And you sort of try to find something similar. Find an assumption. Now, this is actually a hard type of question. Well, assumption is something that they never write down, but they assume that the reader knows. And so they give you a text, an argument, and they say something important in the text, and then they ask you, what assumption do you have among the choices that will support and make the argument valid? The last type of question is actually quite hard. In the text, they have a principle, some kind of rule, some kind of idea that serve as a rule. And then they give you many choices, tiny little story, where you have to look and try to find which of the choices will follow the same rule. Now, the next big type of question in the thinking skill test is called abstract reasoning. It is all about dealing with the relationships between the shapes. It may ask you about the transition, like rotation, flip, and that kind of thing. Okay, so here is an example of your abstract, your reasoning question in the OC test. So you have a pictures and you have to look at it and try to figure out which of the choices is the correct perspective. When you look at the picture from a different angle, it could be from above or from a side. Here is one more where they have a picture that has been broken up into pieces, and you have to decide which of the pictures actually contain the pieces. All right, now the next big group of question is called a mathematical reasoning. Now, is there a real difference between the normal math question and the one you see in the thinking skill paper? Yes. in the thinking skill paper, they use a math to support some conclusion. So it is an extra step. You have to do some math. And then after that, you use the result to support the argument in the question. So essentially, you have a question that asks you come up with some sort of argument. And then you need to use a math to be able to support it. So in a sense, the math question inside the thinking skill paper is actually harder than the normal math that you see outside. This is one question from the year 4 OC paper. And something you may find is that the math question may have no numbers at all, because it's asked about the position, the order. It asks about things that you actually need to have the math skill, but not necessarily have to do any calculation. So it could be about the order, about the direction, and you may find that these questions seem to be a little bit weird. Now, well, but certainly the question for the selective year level is harder, trickier, and you have more variety. Okay, now we get to the last section of the question type. They introduce a tricky type of question called logical reasoning. Now, they never say that, but the nature of these questions requires students to get some idea about logic. I find out that the best way to deal with these hard questions is to learn a little bit about logic. The normal reasoning won't cut it. And that's why I have to create, training videos for students to deal with the formal logic. And the tricky thing is that this sort of thing is never taught, in high school. And very few people actually, learn it. Most of the people who learn this sort of thing is when they go to a university and they get themselves enrolled into philosophy or maybe pure math. Okay, so this is one example of a logical question at the OC year 4 level. Okay, so let's have a look. So you start with a statement. Only those students who attend the meeting at lunchtime today will be allowed to go on the excursion to the museum next week. Okay, so the statement is supposed to be true. So they ask, if the information above is true, whose reasoning is correct? Then you have 2 people talking, and each of them say something. And your job is going to find out which person is right. Or maybe both people are right, or maybe both of them are wrong. Now, logical reasoning require you to use certain rule to get it right. And the truth is, how are you going to get these rules? You have to learn about it. And most students don't even know anything about it. And for the selective level, you get the same thing. It just gets harder, and the logic may become more complex. And when you read the text, you will see that there will be, very long and complex sentence. Now, in some cases, they give you a really nasty kind of question. It sort of makes reasoning. Now, the typical problem with these questions is that they don't appear to fall into any of the three types of verbal, logical, or a mathematical your reasoning. Now, they don't give this sort of question for students doing the OC test at year 4 level. There are very few of these questions, but they mainly appear in the selective school test. Now, students tend to get confused and they fall back and think this is just a general, verbal or reasoning kind of question. Okay, so the truth is you need to know and have all the skill you need in verbal reasoning, mathematical reasoning, and logical reasoning to deal with these nasty mixed questions. Now, so I found some questions in the selective paper. And here is one. A famous author has written 3 children books. The title are Morning, Noon, and Night. Year 5 did a survey to discover which of the book was most popular in the class. It was found that now all the children who had read Morning also read Noon. Most of the children who had read Morning had also read Night. No child had read Night who has not read Noon. Now we know Tim has read Noon. Which one of the following statement is true? Yeah, so this sort of thing. The first impression is that it seems to involve some kind of set theory here. You know, all the children, most of the children, no child. It seems to involve some kind of set theory, Venn diagram, and that kind of thing. So it seems to be a math kind of question. But at the same time, this is not math. It seems to have some kind of logic. Somebody have read this, but not read that. So this sort of thing, you will require skill across all the areas to be able to do them well. Now, this is another example where it seems to be your logic. But it also involves some sort of math. So you have 4 friends standing together. And Aaron say only one of us is saying something false. And Bridget exact 2 of us are saying something false. And Kaylin said exactly 3 of us are saying something false. And David said exactly 4 of us are saying something false. Look pretty crazy. And then they ask you which one of the friends must be telling the truth. So it has something to do with math. It has something to do with logic. And the way people solve this kind of question is to do guess and check. They assume that one of the kids is telling the truth and then check and try to find any inconsistency. So if you assume that Aaron is the one telling the truth, and look at her statement and check everything else to see whether there will be a contradiction. Now, if you see a contradiction, you cross Aaron out, then you move on to the next. Well, eventually you get to one that will make sense. That means everything will become consistent. Here is another example. So the Tang family are planning a day out tomorrow, and they will decide where to go based on the weather in the morning. Then you have many possibilities. Now, the trouble with this kind of thing is that they also use certain words that create uncertainty. For example, like the word might or could, possible, that sort of thing. Create sort of a mix between general verbal reasoning, but then the style is also your logical reasoning. You have two people and they make statement, and then you have to decide which one is correct. And so it's sort of a mix between logical reasoning and normal verbal reasoning. And it's actually quite tricky. Okay, so how do students learn about Cambridge thinking skill? Well, a lot of the parents are so confused, and a lot of tutoring shops are only about to make money. So there is the wrong way to learn about it. Now, you have tutoring shops out there claiming that they run special classes, and they get the student to come and practice your questions and learn about thinking skill. And they may start with, student in year 2 and year 3, year 4, year 5, and all that type. Now, that is actually the wrong way to learn about it, because you cannot really become good at it just by practicing the questions. It doesn't work that way. The way Cambridge designed this thing is that you really need to have strong skill in language. You need to have general knowledge, and you need to have problem-solving skill in math to be able to be ready to deal with these questions. So there are 3 areas. You need to get English to a high level. You need math to the higher level. Okay, so as I said before, the student needs to develop English skill. That's what's important. Next, they need to enrich general knowledge. And then they also need to develop the math problem-solving skills. The only area where there is no formal, training and lesson is the abstract reasoning skill. All they need to do is to do plenty of questions about visual reasoning. And eventually they will figure out all the tricks in this sort of thing. Now, once they have very high English skill, good knowledge about the world around them, and they have strong math problem-solving skill, the next thing is they get training. The training in thinking skill is very quick and short. The verbal reasoning training, the logic training, all these can happen in a few hours. Okay, so now I'm going to take you to my website, and we will explore all the things that I have for the student. First, let's start with English language skill. All right, so this is an account at year 4, year level. Now, this is for students who prepare for the OC test. Now, you see on my website, there are series of English called reading skill. So here is a reading skill series for year 3. And then you have the reading skill series for year 4. Now, the student in year 4 preparing OC, they have to reach the reading skill series for year 5. Yeah, this is where the level of English is getting good enough. I have shown you the reading skill series for the year 4 student. Now, very similar, the student who prepare for the selective test will continue and do the reading skill series for year 6, year 7, and year 8. There are training modules on my website that will help students in English. So now you go to more. One of the first thing that I want students to do is to go to the writing workshop. Now, here you have some of the video that are so important. So for the basic skill level, there are video talking about sentence structures and parts of speech. So you have adjective, adverb, and then the construction of phrases and the sentence, subject and predicate. And then you learn about complex sentences. And you learn about how to use conjunction to create, compound and complex sentences. So this is about writing, but this is also very important about grammar, where the student create phrases and clauses to do the job of adjective and adverb. And so this is what it is, with adjectival and adverbial clauses, and also in phrases. So the basic skill, the grammar, the structure of the sentences. All this is very important because it helps students to write well and also helps students to read the hard text that come with the thinking skill of questions. The other thing that is also very useful for students is the video resources. Now here, I collected a lot of videos on YouTube. So you go into English and you have so many videos about grammar, about tenses, about sentences, and then reading comprehension, video talking about, like the element inside the text, stuff like main idea, things like your inference, read between the line, and all that kind of thing. And I also have your video that I extract from BrainPop, very high quality video. Yeah. So all these things can help students of older years, from year 3 all the way to year 6, to develop their English skill to very, very advanced level. Now, the next bit that I want to talk about is improving general knowledge. Now, this is very important. This is through reading and listening. Students need to have strong vocab. Now, by reading nonfiction and listening and watching, they get to know, and they know how the word get used in different fields of science and technology and a society. Now, I know students tend to be lazy about reading nonfiction. Now, that's why I create a module for them. Now, this is called general knowledge. Now, you go in there and I have a sensor collection for students all the way from kindy upward. But for the year 3, year 4 student, they should start, looking at all the things about the world around us, and then the science and technology for young kids, the simple machine, get to know about the world, and I include in here many extract of the videos that I get from BrainPop about science. So this will be the minimum that student should do. Now, they should do this very early when they are in year 1, year 2, year 3. The reason is because once they get to year 4, year 5, under the pressure that they have to prepare for the OCE and a selective test, they don't find much time anymore. So they give up on science and they give up on the general stuff. And that prevents them from becoming very high performers. I only strongly recommend that the students spend their time listening to story. And I have a module called story time. It's important for students to listen to story when they are very young. Apart from this, I also create a smaller collection called Classic Tales. Now, Classic Tales have the favorite, your fairy tales. So, for example, here I have Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Listening and reading the caption is going to inspire all the children. Now, so what I have done is to create the collection, and I use AI to scan through and actually create all the caption. So you see, the student can listen and enjoy, and they read the caption at the same time. This is a very natural way to get the words into their mind. And come with it all the inspiration. And what I found out is that the students who enjoy fairy tales, eventually they will write better. So creative writing, story writing, scholarship writing, the students who love and inspired by all these fairy tales and the classic tales, they grow up to become more creative in their writing. All right, now when it comes to math problem solving skill, this is one of the area where the students struggle as well. It's very easy to learn the basic school math, but problem solving is hard. The students have to have good English too, so they can read the word problem and they can understand. They need to have the general knowledge as well, so they know what the math problem is talking about. So this is why I keep on telling students that they have to read the word problem in math in the way that they read a story. And they need to understand the story in the math problem. And then they can see the relationship between the different things inside the math problem. And then they can identify ways to figure out the steps and solve the whole problem. From student from year 2 to year 4, I have a document. Now, so you go to quick link and you go down and you will find the field very important, your document. Now, the first thing is to make sure that the student run ahead of their school year by about 1 year or 2 years in the basic school math. Now, for that purpose, I have a guide called Math Lesson Guide. Now, it shows you how, it tells the parent how to use a math online to get the student to run ahead of school by about 2 years. Now, this is possible because with math online, you can cover an entire year within 3 months. And for the smart student, running ahead by 2 years is not hard at all. And once that is done, I have another document called Math Problem Solving Strategy, year 2 to 3. Now, I say year 2 to 3 because I don't want to scare the student. It's actually cover many things up to year 5. Now, in the document, I talk a lot about mental math to help the student to be able to calculate inside their mind and get things done quickly. Now, this is very essential for exam. They have to be able to add numbers and multiply simple numbers inside their mind without needing paper and pen. And talk about some of the advanced strategy to deal with algebra. And I talk about strategy to speed up and avoid the kind of calculation that they don't have to do. So by getting ahead of school by about 1 year or 2 years in the basic school math and do the math problem solving strategy that I provide, the student in year 3 to 4 can do really well in math. Now, once they get to the beginning of year 4, or for the student in year 5, prepare for the selective test, I have the math problem solving strategy year 4 to 5, and now again, that will cover many strategy, to higher your level. And this document is going to help the student to learn the 10 strategy that I set up. Now, these 10 strategy will assist students and help them to deal with hard your problem solving. And that will take them to a very high level. In fact, this is actually something that they will use for the rest of their life. Now, for the year 5 student, I also have another document called Math Problem Solving Strategy 6 to 7. Now, that go into the depth and some of the area in year 7 and 8. These things really help the student to deal with the hardest math that they see out there. I also have a special advanced math class. Now, this is a Google math class where the student will learn many topics and skill. And some of these topics will push into year 7 and year 8 as well. So the Google Advanced year 5 to 6 math on my website actually help the student to accelerate to part of year 7 and 8, and that will take them to the top year level. And once they reach the end of this thing, they should be able to deal with the difficult year 6 Singapore math. And year 6 in Singapore is year 7 here. And it's actually very, very advanced. Right, so that was about the strategy for math. Okay, for abstract reasoning skill, it is actually quite simple. Just do plenty of questions for general ability. All right, so in an account for year 4, you will have general ability grade 3 to 4, general ability booster for grade 3 and 4. And then you have a series called general ability grade 4. Now in here, you have all sort of things, but the visual reasoning is stuff like paper folding, the figure classification, the figure matrices, and then there's also plenty of that kind of question in the mix your reasoning. Now, the reason why is it good to do general ability test, because if the student apply for private school scholarship test, they will need this sort of thing. And there is also the OC, General Ability Boosters. Now, this series was designed for the OC test, but it is still useful. It is really good for the student prepare for scholarship test. And some of the questions in there also cover abstract reasoning. And of course, the OC general ability trials, they were for the old ACER test, but still they are very useful for the high-performing student who want to do scholarship tests. And they also have some abstract reasoning questions in there. As I mentioned before, once English skill and math problem solving get to the top your level, together with general knowledge. It's time for the student to get very quick training in verbal reasoning. Now, for the purpose of verbal reasoning, I have created training lesson. And I also create a module that use the AI to help students to do the training. In your account, you will find a module called Thinking Skill. Now, you have a junior level and a senior level. Now, it is always very important to start from the junior level. Now, in here, you have many training videos. The first section is about sentence structures. This is about grammar. Now, it talks about phrases and clauses and using conjunction to create your complex sentences. Now, this is good for writing, but it's also really good for thinking skill because the student really need to have good grammar to be able to read the complex argument text they put into thinking skill and be able to spot, the main idea, the main part of the sentence, and the bit that add meaning into the main part. So a student who is really good in grammar and sentence structures will be a better reader, and that will help them to deal with the verbal reasoning better. Now, certain very essential English skill is needed. Main idea is so important. The student need to be able to read and get the main idea really quickly. Right? So I have a video for that, and the student should be able to make your inference. Now, this skill is really important to get to the conclusion of the text. And then I have 2 video lessons. Now, these are very heavy ones. So 2 videos that train the student in verbal reasoning and logical reasoning. Now, this is for the student at year 4 level. Now, don't even try when you are only in year 2 and 3, because these are just very, very advanced. The student needs to have very advanced knowledge of year 5 material to be able to deal with these things. Now, then for the year 5 student, after doing everything for junior level, the year 5 student can go to the senior section. Now, in senior section, they get the same thing except some extra stuff. Now, a formal introduction to propositional logic. Now, this is optional. This is really advanced. This is a university level. It's for mom and dad to look and watch together with the kid. Now, really for the really smart ones. And then, down here, I have lots of booster tests for students to do. Now, at the junior level, they have the easier set, and at the senior level, they have the harder set. I also have designed a module that is really important. This is called verbal and logical reasoning, powered by the AI. Now, when you enter this module, by default, the student will be in a junior mode. Now, for the year 5 student who have done the easy stuff, they can switch to the senior mode. Then now see, you can switch between the verbal reasoning and a logical reasoning. All right, so let's try and have a look at some of the things. So the junior mode first and verbal reasoning. Now you can get a random question. So just get a question. All right, so here we have a question, and the student can just pick the choices, study the question, and pick the choices and check them. So let's just check A, for example. Now, so you got it wrong. All right. Now, you also notice that if you get another question, can you say the choice of question actually changed? Yeah. So what I recommend is stick with the random style. It will move among them. Now, for logical reasoning, same thing. It will, you can have the random style and you can get a question. Yeah, and after that, you see it moved to a different style. Yeah, see that? And so, yeah, this module is really, really good. This is pretty amazing that the latest model, GPT-4, can actually handle the logical questions. Now, the beauty of the module is that you get unlimited number of questions. Every time you request a question, you get a new one, a completely new one. And this will give the student on Mathemafix a pretty extreme, level of training. Now, the other things is that the system is designed so once you get to 10 questions, you will be able to download all the questions. Now, if you want to use the module to give student a test, I suggest that for year 4, you probably want to get to the maximum of 20 questions. And for the year 5 student, you get to about 25. Now, by the time you get to 10 questions, the system will allow you to have a copy of all the question, the explanation, the answer key, all that. So you can actually copy and save. And yeah, for the future. The logic training is inside thinking skill, as I mentioned before. So yeah, I reckon that the training for verbal reasoning and logic training should happen at the same time. So guys, so we have reached the end of the presentation. And so by now, I hope that you really know what Cambridge thinking skill is all about, and about the strategies and the resources that I have on Mathemafix to help students. For the past few years, it has been pretty amazing. I have been trying to improve the resources every year, and now with the AI to help me, this is very, very good. We have all the tools and the right strategy. The performance of the student on the website has been strongest in thinking skill, and that trend will keep on going with all the extra improvement and the support of the AI that I have just put into the system.